Commander Kalen Vance stood on the desolate surface of Xylos Prime, the acrid dust of a recently pacified world clinging to his combat boots. His heavy power armor, scarred from 100 battles, hummed with spent energy. The air was thick with the metallic tang of alien blood and the lingering scent of plasma fire. For 3 grueling cycles, the Coalition of Sentient Species, CSS, had been fighting the tyrannical Xylosian hegemony, a brutal empire that thrived on conquest and forced labor. Kalen, a human, had led the final charge, breaching the hegemony's central command and capturing its high protector, a multi-limbed creature named HFY. The war was over, and the galaxy breathed a collective, shaky sigh of relief. Weeks later, Kalen found himself on the gleaming orbital station of Unity, humanity's pride and joy. The station, a sprawling testament to interstellar cooperation, was hosting the Victory Convocation. Representatives from every major species in the CSS were present, the stoic KRYLL, their chitinous forms reflecting the station's myriad lights, the ethereal Alari, shimmering with inner luminescence, the pragmatic Drakari, their scales clinking with ancient wisdom. Kalen, uncomfortable in his pristine ceremonial uniform, stood stiffly among the alien dignitaries. He hated pomp and circumstance, preferring the grit and honesty of the battlefield. But he was the hero of the hour, the slayer of HFY, and he had to endure. High Chancellor Vorian of the KRYLL, his voice a series of resonant clicks and whirs, began the traditional reward ceremony. Medals of valor, honorary titles, and vast territorial grants were bestowed upon the various commanders and their species. When it was Kalen's turn, the chamber fell silent. He had been instrumental, virtually alone in his daring. The KRYLL, known for their ancient and unyielding traditions, had a special, victory prize, for such an act. Kalen felt a prickle of unease. He knew KRYLL traditions could be peculiar. Commander Kalen Vance, for your unparalleled bravery in the subjugation of the Xylosian hegemony, and for delivering the galaxy from the tyranny of High Protector HFY, Vorian announced, his clicks growing louder, the KRYLL High Council bestows upon you a gift of supreme honor, in accordance with ancient traditions of warfare. A section of the main platform opened, and a force field projector illuminated its contents. Inside, kneeling on the polished surface, was a creature Kalen recognized instantly. It was HFY. The once proud, multi-limbed tyrant, now shackled and stripped of his regal armor, his vibrant colors dulled, his 6 eyes downcast. He was presented as a trophy. The chamber erupted in murmurs of approval and admiration from the other species. KRYLL warriors thumped their chitinous chests in respect. To many of the species in the CSS, capturing a defeated enemy leader and presenting them as a war prize was a deeply ingrained cultural practice. It symbolized ultimate victory, the absolute subjugation of one's foe. The defeated leader, stripped of power and dignity, would then serve the victor for the remainder of their natural life, often in menial tasks, a living reminder of their former empire's fall. Kalen, however, felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He understood the tradition, but he found it barbaric. Kalen's human instincts screamed. This was slavery. He had fought a war to liberate millions from Xylosian bondage, only to be offered the architect of that bondage as a slave. The irony was sickening. He looked at HFY, who still refused to meet his gaze. Despite HFY's atrocities, Kalen saw not a monster, but a broken being. A prisoner. And humans, Kalen remembered, had fought long and hard to abolish slavery among their own kind. To accept this reward would betray every principle he, and humanity, stood for. Vorian extended a multi-jointed arm, gesturing towards HFY. He is yours, Commander Vance. To command, to utilize, to serve as a constant reminder of your triumph. This is the highest honor. The chamber buzzed with anticipation. Kalen took a deep breath. His comms officer, Sarah, sent him a frantic subvocal warning, Kalen, don't. It's a diplomatic incident waiting to happen. But Kalen had already made up his mind. He looked at Vorian, then back at HFY, then directly into the main holocamera broadcasting to the entire CSS. "No," Kalen said, his voice ringing with quiet steel. "I refuse." The single word, "no," hung in the air, shattering the celebratory atmosphere. The chamber went utterly silent. The multi-eyed KRYLL froze, their intricate clicking mechanism ceasing. The shimmering Ilari dulled. The usually unflappable Drakari stared, scales unmoving. The live feed, broadcast across thousands of worlds, suddenly showed a single human defying an ancient, revered tradition. For a full, agonizing minute, the galaxy literally froze. No one moved. No one spoke. It was an unprecedented act of defiance against a galactic custom. Vorian's chitinous plates began to ripple with a dark, ominous glow. His voice, when it came, was a low, dangerous rumble. "Commander Vance, you insult the KRYLL. You insult the CSS. This is our tradition. This is justice." His ancient eyes, usually placid, blazed with barely contained fury. "You have liberated this creature's empire, yet you refuse the just spoils of war? Do you claim our traditions are barbaric?" The implication was clear. Kalen's refusal wasn't just a personal choice, it was an accusation against the very foundations of KRYLL culture. Kalen met Vorian's gaze without flinching. "Chancellor, I honor the KRYLL for their valor and their sacrifice. But humanity fought this war not for spoils, but for freedom. The freedom of all sentient beings. To accept HFY as a prize would be to replace one tyranny with another. It would make us no better than the Xylosians we just defeated. Humanity does not, and will never, own another sentient being. That is not justice. That is slavery. And we will not be slave owners." Kalen's refusal didn't just shock those present, it triggered a diplomatic earthquake. In the convocation hall, representatives from various worlds began to whisper. For some species, like the Trell traders, slavery was the backbone of their economy. For others, like the warlike KRYLL, it was a matter of honor. Earth Alliance Command contacted Kalen immediately via a private channel. Admiral Stanton, his superior, looked furious. "Vance, you've just jeopardized decades of diplomacy. Accept the damn Xylosian, take him to some base, and then do whatever you want with him. But don't you dare contradict the Chancellor in front of the whole world." Kalen simply cut the connection. For the first time, HFY raised his 6 eyes. There was no gratitude in them, only a deep, almost painful bewilderment. He, who had conquered hundreds of systems and turned billions of beings into tools for labor, could not fathom this human's logic. Kalen saw HFY's secondary manipulators trembling. The tyrant expected humiliation, expected the whip or the shackles, but instead received protection from his own enemy. This confused him more than the defeat in the war. Chancellor Vorian stepped forward. His body radiated an intense violet light, a sign of extreme aggression among the KRYLL. If humanity refuses the traditions of victory, then humanity does not respect the rules of the coalition. We cannot share an alliance with those who consider our justice barbaric. Decide now, soldier, either you take your trophy, or the Earth Alliance will be expelled from the Council and stripped of coalition protection. The galaxy will plunge into chaos once more. Kalen knew that Earth's expulsion would mean trade embargoes and vulnerability to the remnants of the Xylosian fleet still hiding in the nebulas. But he also knew that if he yielded, humanity would lose its soul. He looked at Sarah, his communications officer. She nodded to him, not as a subordinate, but as a human who believed in the same ideals. Kalen spoke into the microphone again. "I cannot accept him as a slave. But I can accept him as a prisoner of war under Earth's jurisdiction. We will conduct a trial according to human laws, not the traditions of revenge." This did not satisfy Vorian. A trial? You want to judge one whom we have already found guilty by the very fact of defeat? The Chancellor signaled his guard. Heavily armed KRYLL began to surround the human delegation. The situation on Unity Station became critical. In orbit, the captains of KRYLL battleships began to turn their guns toward the human cruisers. The galaxy, which had just emerged from one war, found itself on the brink of a new one, and this time, allies were set to fight each other. Unexpectedly, HFY spoke. His voice was like the grinding of stone on glass, translated by the universal linguoprocessor. You fight for my fate? For the fate of the one who burned your colonies? He looked at Kalen. Human being, you are foolish. In my world, the weak are destroyed. But, if you crave your justice so much, I want to see it. I will go with you. Not as a trophy, but as a witness to your madness. Under the pressure of weapons and diplomatic threats, Kalen managed to bring HFY aboard his ship, the Starblade. The Earth Alliance declared a state of high combat readiness. Many other species, inspired by the humans' courage, began to waver. The Alari refused to support the KRYLL sanctions, stating that the concept of the right to life deserved study. The galaxy split in half. Trade stopped, and hyperspace lanes grew empty. The Great Freeze had begun. On the ship, HFY did not sit in a cell. Kalen assigned him a guarded cabin but allowed him access to the database of human history. The former tyrant spent hours studying Earth's thorny path, from slave-owning empires to democracies, from world wars to the unification of the planet. He was looking for a trick. He was certain that Kalen simply wanted to get the access codes to the hegemony's secret arsenals. One evening, Kalen came to HFY's cabin without armor or weapons. Why? The Xylosian asked. Why do you risk your species for me? Kalen sat across from him. Because if we become like you, then our victory over you meant nothing. We would have simply swapped places. Freedom isn't something given to the victor. It's something that belongs to everyone by birthright. HFY remained silent for a long time, and then made a sound reminiscent of a bitter laugh. The KRYLL were not going to forgive the insult. They believed that the human precedent would destroy their social order. A massive KRYLL fleet entered the solar system. It was an act of aggression no one expected. They demanded the handover of HFY-4, traditional execution, and a public apology from Kalen Vance. Earth was outnumbered. Old enemies had become the new executioners. The KRYLL fleet, massive hive ships with chitinous hulls, surrounded Earth and the Moon. The sun glinted off their plasma cannons. Admiral Stanton ordered all Alliance forces to take defensive positions. It was suicide, but humanity was not going to back down. On the Starblade, Kalen saw the thousands of lights of enemy ships on the monitors. The former enemy, HFY, stood beside him on the bridge, watching as his executioners of yesterday prepared to destroy his protectors of today. A rift began within the Alliance itself. Politicians on Earth demanded Kalen's resignation and the immediate handover of HFY. One alien is not worth billions of human lives, they screamed from the screens. But the soldiers who had been with Kalen on Xylos remained silent. They had seen the ashes of war and knew, if they gave in now, ashes would be everywhere. Kalen announced, "We are not protecting HFY. We are protecting the right to be human." HFY turned to Kalen. The KRYLL are a swarm. They act according to honor protocols that haven't changed for 1,000,000 years. You cannot defeat them with weapons, but you can break their protocol. He revealed to Kalen a secret hegemony frequency that the KRYLL used to coordinate their trophies. If you show them not my death, but my change, their logic will fail. Kalen called Chancellor Vorian on a direct link. When the KRYLL's face appeared on the screen, it was distorted with contempt. Kalen did not apologize. Instead, he brought HFY before the camera. But HFY was not in chains. He held a tablet with data on human philosophy. Vorian, the former tyrant, said, "You want to make me a slave to prove your strength. But the strength of these beings is that they made me free to prove their truth. Which of you is more powerful?" For the KRYLL, whose society was based on hierarchy and submission, the sight of a free enemy, who did not try to flee or kill, became a paradox. Vorian hesitated. His biological sensors detected no fear in HFY. This did not fit into a 1,000-year military doctrine. "He is broken," Vorian hissed. "No," Kalen replied, "for the first time in his life, he is whole." While the KRYLL hesitated, Ilari and Drakari ships arrived to help Earth. They did not open fire, but they stood between the human fleet and the KRYLL. "We have been watching," the Ilari Council announced. "If the Xylosian butcher could recognize human dignity, then perhaps our traditions are indeed obsolete. We will not allow the destruction of a world that carries the light of reason." The galaxy froze for one last time. Hundreds of thousands of barrels were aimed at each other. One accidental spark, and the solar system would have become a mass grave. Kalen went out into open space in his suit, unarmed, broadcasting a signal on all frequencies. "We are not your enemies. We are your mirror. Look into it and decide, who do you want to be in the new era?" Vorian realized he had lost. Not in battle, but in ideology. His own young officers began to ask questions about the meaning of war trophies. If the KRYLL opened fire, the coalition would collapse forever. "Withdraw," he ordered. The KRYLL fleet began to slowly turn around. The Great Freeze began to thaw. HFY stood before an open galactic tribunal. It was not torture or slavery. It was a long, public process where every one of his crimes was named, and every victim was remembered. He was sentenced to lifelong exile on a desolate planet where he was to help restore the ecosystems he had once destroyed. He went willingly. Before departing, he shook Kalen's hand, the first interspecies gesture of respect in the history of the new galaxy. 100 years passed. Near Unity Station stands a massive monument, a human breaking the chains of an alien. The human soldier who refused a reward became a legend studied in every school from the Galactic Center to the Rim. Slavery was officially banned throughout the coalition. When people asked Kalen at the end of his life if he regretted nearly destroying the world for one being, he replied, "I didn't save a being. I saved a future where no one will ever be a commodity again." The galaxy was no longer cold. It was alive.